Namaskar, and a very warm welcome to the first episode of InsPIRE Economic Edge. I am Debesh, Chairman, Institute of Pioneering Insightful Research Private Limited, InsPIRE. InsPIRE is a research and consultancy firm specializing in economic and climate change policies. In this episode, I'll speak on the Union Budget, paving the path to Viksit Bharat by 2047. The budget exemplifies a skillful balancing act between fostering economic growth and upholding fiscal discipline. It demonstrates a strategic approach to navigating the complexities of political uncertainties, elevated asset prices, and persistent supply chain disruptions. As India moves towards a phase of substantial economic transformation, this budget stands out for its meticulous fiscal management and its broad-based support for various sectors. Adopting a cautious approach, the budget effectively aligns growth targets with prudent fiscal oversight, all while addressing inflation concerns and confronting significant economic challenges. As Honorable Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi has said, budget for Viksit Bharat ensures inclusive growth, benefiting every segment of society and paving the way for a developed India. The economic survey forecasts real GDP growth of 6.5% to 7% for 24-25, a slight decrease from earlier projections. The cautious estimate reflects the budget's conservative stance, taking into account potential growth risks and inflationary pressures. Nominal GDP growth is anticipated to reach 10.5%, indicative of a low GDP deflator. If India is to attain the status of a developed nation by 2047, it's imperative that it must grow at an average annual rate of 8% for the next 2 decades to touch $30 trillion from the current $3.5 trillion. For FY25, the fiscal deficit is set at 4.9% of GDP, down from the 5.1% projected in the interim budget and 5.6% in the previous financial year. This adjustment underscores a commitment to fiscal consolidation, aiming to preserve the gains of previous years while avoiding the risks of unchecked spending. Consequently, the debt to GDP ratio is projected to decline from 58.2% to 56.8%. The target appears achievable given conservative revenue projections and a focus on asset monetization rather than aggressive disinvestment. The strategic engagement of multilateral development agencies to support states like Bihar and Andhra Pradesh exemplifies a resource-efficient approach that avoids further straining the budget. The budget outlines a refined fiscal strategy marked by both practical adjustments and strategic realignments. The adjustment is largely due to an additional $1.3 trillion in dividends and profits, including a significant contribution from the RBI surplus. Although the influx of funds is beneficial, nearly half of it will be directed towards increased revenue spending, subtly shifting the balance between revenue and capital expenditure. Total revenue from dividends and profits received by Government of India increased by a massive 70.6% from 1.7 trillion rupees in 23-24 to 2.9 trillion rupees estimated for 24-25. This follows a 70% increase in 23-24. Capital expenditure plays a pivotal role in the center's post-pandemic recovery strategy, rising by 16.8% from 9.5 trillion rupees in 23-24 to 11.11 trillion rupees in 24-25. From 14-15 to 24-25, CapEx has experienced a CAGR of 18.6%. In the last 5 years, 2021 to 24-25, the CAGR has surged to 26.8%, making a significant increase from the 9.7% CAGR observed between 14-15 and 19-20. Unlike routine expenditures such as salaries and office maintenance, which account for approximately 80 to 90% of centers' total spending, CapEx is aimed at creating new assets, generating employment, and boosting economic output, delivering substantial long-term benefits through its multiplier effects. The government has decreased its revenue expenditure from 11.8% of GDP in FY24 to 11.4% of GDP in FY25. Meanwhile, capital expenditure will rise to 3.4% of GDP from 3.2% in FY24. Consequently, total expenditure is now set at 14.8% of GDP, slightly below 15% in FY24, but higher than the 14.5% projected in the interim budget. Despite this increase in spending, the fiscal deficit target remains unchanged as the government has successfully raised total receipts to 9.8% of GDP from 9.4% in FY24. The allocation of capital expenditure illustrates a significant shift in fiscal strategy. The center has suitably transferred a substantial portion of capital spending responsibilities to the states, resulting in a decreased direct share from the central government. Additionally, public sector enterprises are now taking on a larger share of the expenditure. This reallocation represents a strategic move to leverage the contributions of both states and public sector entities in driving infrastructure and asset building projects, aligning with the overarching objective of economic revitalization. A key highlight of the budget is the relief granted to taxpayers, which is expected to lead to a 16.1% increase in income tax collections. This represents a deceleration from 22.6% growth experienced in the previous year. The slower growth rate could indicate a conservative forecast or reflect concerns about a potential economic slowdown. Likewise, the government has projected reduced growth rates for corporate tax, namely 10.5% from 11.7%, and GST collections from 12.7% to 11%. These projections suggest a cautious stance in revenue forecasting, possibly signaling underlying economic uncertainties. To enhance crop productivity and bolster resilience against climate risks, the budget has outlined substantial reforms to India's agricultural research system. These reforms aim to protect and improve farm incomes while stabilizing consumer prices. Budget for agriculture and allied sectors, including research, fisheries, and animal husbandry, showing a modest 3.5% increase from 1.47 trillion rupees in 23-24 to 1.52 trillion rupees in 24-25. This appears insufficient to achieve these ambitious objectives. The budget has proposed a thorough review of the agricultural research framework, focusing on boosting productivity and developing climate-resilient crop varieties. Plans include the introduction of 109 new varieties, high-yielding and climate-resilient varieties across 32 crops. This initiative will be funded through a challenge mode, encouraging private sector investment. In a bid to promote sustainable farming practices, the budget has set a target to enroll 10 million farmers in natural farming methods over the next 2 years. Among central sector schemes for agriculture, the Modified Interest Subvention Scheme has seen its allocation rise by 21.1% in FY25. However, other major schemes like the PM Kisan and Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana have not received additional farming funding, indicating stagnation in financial support for these programs. Despite emphasizing the importance of agricultural research, the budget's financial allocations for the sector are modest. The Department of Agriculture Research and Education received a slight 0.6% increase from the previous year. Funding for major research institutions like the Indian Council for Agricultural Research and Central Agricultural Universities has decreased by 2%. Centrally sponsored schemes aimed at improving crop productivity, such as the Rashtriya Krishi Vikas Yojana and Krishi Unnati Yojana, saw marginal increases. There has been a 20.3% reduction in the allocation of allocation for a national mission on natural farming. In rural development, the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin received a significant increase in funding, rising 70.3%, reflecting a strong commitment to improving rural housing infrastructure. In contrast, the MGNREGS saw its allocation remain constant, indicating continued support for rural employment despite economic challenges. However, being demand-driven, additional funds may be provided later based on actual needs. The National Cooperation Policy aims to advance the cooperative sector, promoting rural economic growth and job creation by creating a supportive environment for cooperatives, thereby fostering inclusive development and strengthening the rural economy. The budget emphasizes job creation, particularly through incentives for first-time employment and manufacturing, expected to generate 5 million new jobs. Key initiatives include a robust support package for MSMEs. This includes a new credit guarantee scheme for collateral-free loans up to rupees 100 crore per applicant, improved credit assessment models for focusing on digital footprints, and a government-backed guarantee fund to support distressed MSMEs and prevent non-performing asset status. The Mudra loan limit is increased to 20 lakhs for successful borrowers, and the turnover threshold for mandatory onboarding on the TREADS platform is reduced to 250 crore to improve liquidity for MSMEs. SIDBI plans to expand its reach with 24 new branches and provide financial support for food irradiation units and safety testing labs. E-commerce export hubs will be established in a PPP mode to facilitate international sales by MSMEs and artisans. However, challenges such as establishing MSME identities and accessing formal financial services remain critical issues to address. The budget allocated modest increases in several critical areas, with notable boosts in funding for states and gender budgeting. The gender budget is set to rise by nearly 19%, while transfers to states derived from the center's tax revenue have increased by 18%. Education funding saw a 15.5% increase and health funding rose by 12.7%. Additionally, transport allocations grew by 3.8%. In response to the strong post-pandemic economic recovery, the subsidy budget covering fertilizer and petroleum was reduced by 7.9%. Defense expenditure also saw a 2.2% decrease. Welfare spending is crucial for meeting the needs of the poor and increasing direct financial support. The government is expected to boost welfare allocation and introduce new initiatives due to employment challenges and recent electoral performance. During the COVID-19 pandemic, welfare spending surged, growing at an average annual rate of 13.5% since 2019-20, up from 8.8% in the previous years. From 16-17 to 24-25, it grew at a CAGR of 13.8%, reflecting continued commitment to supporting vulnerable populations. The budget has introduced a taxonomy for climate finance to support green bonds and attract investment in sustainable projects, boosting the green bond market. It also aims to shift hard-to-abate industries to emission-based targets and develop carbon markets for reducing carbon footprints. To address renewable energy intermittency, the budget promotes pumped hydro storage and nuclear energy development with a goal of adding 50 gigawatts of renewable energy annually. Additionally, changes in customs duties to solar components are designed to strengthen the domestic solar industry, supporting long-term self-reliance and initiatives like PM Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana. The budget has introduced significant reforms in the IBC including an integrated technology platform to unify IT systems and improve transparency and efficiency. It also proposes the creation of more tribunals, including specialized ones for the Companies Act, to address case backlogs and expedite debt recovery. The finance minister highlighted the IBC's success in resolving over 1,000 companies, which has improved debtor behavior and recovery rates. These reforms aim to streamline creditor recovery processes and strengthen the insolvency framework for the legal and financial sectors. The budget has introduced significant revisions to capital gains taxation, raising short-term capital gains tax from 15% to 20% and long-term capital gains tax from 10% to 12.5%, while maintaining tax exemption to gains up to 1.25 lakh rupees per annum. These changes aim to boost revenue and align with global standards, potentially influencing investment behavior. Higher capital gains taxes might shift investments from equities to bank deposits though bank returns remain low. To address speculative trading, the budget increased the securities transaction tax on futures and options. This could temper risky trading, but may impact market turnover. Additionally, the budget has suggested a tiered tax rate for deposit interest to encourage household savings. For real estate, the LTCG tax rate has been reduced to 12.5%, but without the previous indexation benefits. This could stabilize the market, but might also lead to more cash transactions. The new tax regime may be beneficial for properties with a CAGR between 9% and 11.2%. Grandfathering rules will protect existing investments from new tax changes. Other reforms include simplifying FDI regulations, promoting the use of the Indian rupee in international transactions, and taxing share buybacks and dividend income, which could affect investors. The removal of the angel tax and the establishment of a 1,000 crore venture capital fund for the space economy are expected to support startups and foster innovation. Overall, the budget aims to create a resilient financial environment with strategic tax reforms and increased capital expenditure supporting growth and innovation in India. As India aims to become a developed nation by 2047, the budget shows progress in fiscal responsibility and economic policy, but highlights the need for more comprehensive action. It has introduced a new economic policy framework with 17 components to enhance factor markets, but this framework may not fully address emerging global economic challenges. The budget has proposed revising the 1961 Income Tax Act and reviving the draft Simplified Direct Tax Code, signaling a move towards modernizing the tax system. However, a thorough review of customs duties and GST is still needed for greater stability. While the budget includes initiatives for energy transition, these measures require scaling up to match global urgency. There is also a notable lack of focus on preparing for an AI-driven economy, suggesting the need for a more strategic approach to remain competitive. Budget reflects a commitment to fiscal responsibility, but underscores the need for further efforts in energy transformation and AI readiness to meet India's development goals. The budget emphasizes policy continuity and fiscal prudence over increased welfare spending, deferring such expenditures to future needs. With India's entry into the Global Bond Index, there will be increased scrutiny on debt levels. The focus is on targeted investments rather than broad subsidies, prioritizing skill development, job creation, and farmer welfare. while planning reforms in factor markets to boost productivity. The fiscal strategy for FY25 aims to balance immediate revenue needs with long-term growth, adjusting spending and capital expenditure to address post-pandemic challenges. Although there is a slight increase in revenue spending relative to capital expenditure, the approach supports economic recovery and infrastructure development. Prudent tax revenue projections further indicate a cautious stance and changing economic conditions. Overall, the FY25 budget represents a stable and dynamic economic framework, focusing on fiscal responsibility, strategic reforms, and infrastructure investment. It lays the groundwork for sustainable growth and aims to achieve the ambitious Viksit Bharat goal by 2047, provided that its initiatives are effectively implemented. Thank you, viewers. Please do share your comments. In the forthcoming episodes of InsPIRE Economic Edge, I intend to discuss important Indian and global economic issues and events. Please do like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Goodbye and namaskar.